All right, joining us is Aparna Pandey. She is the research fellow at Hudson Institute, a senior research fellow at Hudson Institute. Aparna, a lot of anticipation with this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He happens to be the fourth leader to be invited in Trump 2.0. Um, how do you see this? There's obviously the optics that he's been invited in the first, I probably should say 30 days of Donald Trump taking the office. What are your views on this visit?
Thanks, Rohit. Always great to be with you. Two things. I mean, it's symbolic. It's also substantive. Symbolic, I would say the third partner, two security allies, Israel and Japan, and then the Indian Prime Minister. And so that matters. That India is right up there with the security allies and partners, even though it's not a security ally. Second, it's very important to be here in the first 30 days of the administration. The substantive parts are also there. One, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi have a very good personal relationship. They had that in the first Trump administration, and I'm sure both sides would like to rekindle it and ensure that it's there, and it helps both sides deal with some of the prickly issues which are going to come their way. There are areas both agree on, but there are areas where the two will have slightly different takes, and they will need to find ways to navigate them.
Can you tell us what are some of those areas where both the leaders would probably disagree in terms of probably strategy or their own benefit, right? I mean, is there an area where you think that could probably pop up during this visit where the sides would not agree on something?
I would say that both would need to sort of make concessions, and and primarily it's going to be on the trade front.
Okay.
It's going to be trade and tariff. If you recall, sort of both during the first Trump administration, when India lost GSP plus because of market access, and and even during his campaign cycle, the president referred to India as tariff king, and so there are tariff-related issues. India has tried to preempt it by, in the latest budget, some cuts on import duties on Harley Davidsons,
Right.
smartphones, a few others to reduce its tariff and non-tariff barriers, especially for American-made products. Because
Yes.
the primary disagreement is going to be between a Make in America or an America First economic strategy, not security. Security is different, but a Make in America economic strategy versus a Make in India strategy, which the Prime Minister has championed for the last 11 years, and which historically is India's go-to strategy, indigenization. And so when you have these two, then there's going to be a challenge. If
Okay.
American companies are asked to come back to the US, if foreign companies are supposed to invest in the US, then the likelihood that friendshoring and investment in India will take place is going to be less than prior years. So the first area would be the trade and tariff. Second will be immigration. Sort of the legal immigration. There are certain issues which we are all seeing play out, but that will play out over the next months or years.
Yes.
Then there's the illegal dimension, where there are a very large number of illegal Indians, which were not so in the first Trump administration. So that issue is going to play out. But there are going to be areas where they agree, sort of the fact that the very first interaction of Secretary of State Rubio was with the Quad foreign ministers, means that on Indo-Pacific, Quad, in some ways, the China-related strategy, they will get along.
Okay. And there is talk about, India buying more defense products from the US. That's something that we could see in the joint statement tomorrow that India would be buying some more stuff. We've done that. India's done that before as well. Why is it important for, Trump administration to be able to, like we saw other leaders also come and invest, some have announced investments and some have said, reached out and say, the leaking has said, that it'll be $1 trillion, close to $1 trillion. Why is it important for Trump administration to have this sort of messaging where he's inviting leaders or talking to them and saying, look, I'm getting all these leaders and they're going to be investing or creating jobs for the US? I mean, is this visit also serving Trump's purpose to say that he is sending a strong domestic message or some of the election promises that he made? And similarly for India, I think when it comes to Prime Minister Modi, what kind of domestic message is he going to take when he leaves Washington?
The first part of your question, yes, it is very important for President Trump. President Trump, sort of, and his advisors believe that the US American partners and allies have benefited, and the US has lost out on the economic front. And therefore, it's important that American partners and allies invest in the US, and he demonstrates that. Second, defense sales have always been important for American presidents. And India, India is one of those countries which has purchased more, but it still does not purchase as much as many American security partners and allies do.
Right.
In the last 15, 16 years, India has purchased 24 billion. That's a lot for India. But that still places India along with Russia, Israel, and France among the top four suppliers to US to India. And so President Trump would like India to purchase more. India is going to announce that, but India will have limitations. There's the Indian budget and the percentage India spends on defense will limit how much India can purchase from the United States. And so a lot of the announcements tomorrow are those which India has been considering for some years. The second part of your, of your question is, for Prime Minister Modi, it is important to demonstrate that every American president, for the last few years, at least the 11 years that he's been Prime Minister, has emphasized and has prioritized the India-US partnership, that he has a good relationship with them on the symbolic level and on the substantive level, that he can demonstrate that, India is a good partner, the bilateral trade will increase, India is willing to make adjustments, and that this will also lead to American investment and hopefully continued transfer of technology in the defense and in the civilian realm, which is very important for India. And finally, important to send a message to India's neighborhood, especially China
Mm-hmm.
and other countries, that India has a very strong relationship with the United States, and that continues.
Okay. One last question, Aparna, before I let you go. Uh, from a very holistic perspective, right? I mean, any difference that, we could probably, again, very, very early, 30 days into this administration, anything that you can see that's different from the previous administration, uh, compared to Trump 2.0. When I say previous, I mean Biden administration.
So I'd say we have yet to see how strong, two areas. One, President Trump has has talked about China being the main threat and rival, but he's also talked about being able to negotiate a deal with China.
Yeah.
What we need to wait and see is it going to be who in the administration will win out? Those who are the hawks on the security front vis-a-vis China, or those who believe that it is important to get a deal with China because China is too powerful on the economic front and the US needs that economic equilibrium with China. So we have to wait, important for India. And finally, important to send a message to India's neighborhood, especially China
Mm-hmm.
and other countries, that India has a very strong relationship with the United States, and that continues.
Okay. One last question, Aparna, before I let you go. Uh, from a very holistic perspective, right? I mean, any difference that, we could probably, again, very, very early, 30 days into this administration, anything that you can see that's different from the previous administration, uh, compared to Trump 2.0. When I say previous, I mean Biden administration.
So I'd say we have yet to see how strong, two areas. One, President Trump has has talked about China being the main threat and rival, but he's also talked about being able to negotiate a deal with China.
Yeah.
What we need to wait and see is it going to be who in the administration will win out? Those who are the hawks on the security front vis-a-vis China, or those who believe that it is important to get a deal with China because China is too powerful on the economic front and the US needs that economic equilibrium with China. So we have to wait and see. So that's the part which will be different from Biden and which will also be different from Trump 1.0. What happens on the China front? Is it going to be the peer rival and competitor whose rise is going to be stopped by the United States with its allies or partners, or is it a peer rival and competitor whom the US will accept and work with?
Okay.
So that's the primary issue which we have to see. And the second will be, and tied to it is, how important will alliances be? How important will friendships be? For the Biden administration, they were reaffirming alliances, reaffirming partnerships, that the US will work with others, with its friends and partners. We have to see how the China factor the Russia factor will play into how the Trump administration views alliances and friendships, and that will have an impact on India as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Everybody is anticipating this big visit here in India. And, we'll look forward to connecting with you, during and after the visit, to understand what it actually meant for these leaders to have met so early in Trump 2.0. Aparna, thank you so much for joining. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
You too. Thanks.